Well, it is a relief to couples awaiting divorce. A five-judge constitutional bench of the Supreme Court has ruled that marriages between two consenting parties can be dissolved on grounds of irretrievable breakdown. The top court has announced its verdict on batch of petitions relating to exercise of its vast power under Article 142 to dissolve broken marriages between consenting couples without referring them to family courts. Today's ruling makes it clear that the 6-month period of waiting under the Hindu Marriage Act for divorce can be dispensed with in case of irretrievable breakdown of marriage. Couples do not have to approach the family court in such cases anymore. My colleague Harish is joining us on the phone line to give us details. Harish, it is a relief to the couples who are awaiting divorce, where the Supreme Court has now ruled that marriages between two consenting parties can be dissolved on grounds of irretrievable breakdown.
Yes, that's right. Big relief for the couples who are stuck in irrevocably broken down marriage. Supreme Court has fast-tracked the divorce in irretrievably broken down marriages and ruled that it has inherent powers to give direct divorce, and the parties can approach the Supreme Court directly, and Supreme Court can invoke Article 142 to give them instant relief. Till now, couples have to wait for a period up to 6 months to 18 months in a family court, and this applies to totally unworkable, beyond salvage marriages which are beyond salvage. Supreme Court bench has ruled that it can exercise its inherent power under Article 142 of the Constitution to dissolve a marriage on the ground of irretrievable breakdown that is totally unworkable, emotionally dead, and beyond salvage. Supreme Court held that this court can dissolve marriage on the ground of irretrievable breakdown of marriage. We have also laid down factors which can determine whether there will be irretrievable breakdown of marriage. We have held that the period of 6 months can be dispensed with subject to conditions laid down in two judgments. Essentially, court held that it can dissolve marriage without referring parties to a family court, as you rightly said, where they must wait for a period between 6 to 18 months for a decree by mutual consent. Supreme Court held that continuing in a marriage which has broken down irretrievably amounts to cruelty, which is already a ground for divorce under the Hindu Marriage Act. So it's a big relief for couples who are stuck in a irretrievably broken down marriage, and they do not have to languish much. And now that 6 months to 18 months waiting period has been dispensed with, they don't have to go to the family court. They can directly approach the Supreme Court for relief.
All right, Harish, thank you for joining us and giving us those details. Let us now open up a wider conversation with Shilpi Jain, who is a lawyer. She's joining us on the broadcast. Thank you for taking out your time, Shilpi, and speaking with us on Mirror Now. Well, we see it as a relief to the couples who are awaiting divorce, with the Supreme Court now ruling out that marriages between two consenting parties can be dissolved on grounds of irretrievable breakdown. Help us understand what exactly is happening and how significant is it, if so, or we see it through another point where divorce rates in India are slowly in an increase.
The 6 months waiting period only ended up making the parties extremely anxious, and it increased their anxiety. It didn't make their lives better in any way. Two people who've agreed to end decided to end their relationship would in any case end it, whether it's today or after a waiting period, which was compulsive of 6 months or 18 months. So why not do it today? It was stopping the two parties concerned from moving on in their lives. I had a lot of couples coming to me who were extremely troubled by this 6 months compulsory waiting period, and asking me and begging me that, if we could do it immediately in one go, but there were times when it was complicated and there was no law supporting it, which ended up making them extremely anxious and unhappy, and there was a burden. So now people can move on in their lives. There are many times when one of my clients would be based abroad or in another city, and the litigation was in Delhi, so they would have to come again, and it would keep kind of hanging on in their minds. So I think it's very, very progressive judgment. It's the need of the hour. It will not in any way make things worse. Two people who anyway decided will end their marriage, whether it's today or tomorrow. So this waiting period was only a kind of a dagger hanging around their head that the divorce is going to happen, it's going to happen, but it's not happened. So it's going to be giving them a breath of fresh air, and they can have it behind them very soon, instead of it lingering on in their minds for months and years.
Shilpi, also help us understand this waiting period of 6 months to 1 year. What happens in this waiting period? And because it is important to note here, as you rightly mentioned, that couples go through a lot through this period, especially those who want to do it at one go. So, what happens legally in this waiting period?
Ordinarily, you see, I think the spirit behind this waiting period and the provision of first motion for divorce and then a gap of 6 months for the second motion, I think the spirit behind it was so that the couples are given some kind of breathing period to rethink. But I have, in my experience, never had a couple coming back to me after that waiting period of 6 months and saying, no, we've changed our minds. The moment they file the first motion for divorce, they are ready for it and made up their minds. The moment they step into the court, they are kind of prepared mentally and practically that this marriage has ended. So it doesn't change things for the better in terms of saving the marriage. But otherwise, what was happening was there were these repeated hearings before the family court, which kind of became redundant. Whatever was happening on the first date, it was a repetition of the same thing on the second date or the third date. It wasn't doing anything to make their lives better.
Also, if we talk about one of, what Kerala High Court had said last year, well, it said that 1 year wait for seeking divorce by mutual consent is unconstitutional. And it also said that use and throw culture was influencing marriage, which was evident from live-in relations and divorce. How do you connect this with what development has happened from the top court today?
See, this use and throw culture, you can term it like that, or you can term it that in present times, people are becoming more realistic about peeping into their lives and kind of gauging their happiness, whether the two people together are actually happy and whether they are evolving and growing as two individuals, unlike earlier when the social stigma and other pressures were so high that invariably and in many cases the women were left behind crying and living through a very, very bad and violent marriage many times. There were dowry demands, the husband was extremely chauvinistic, violent, but because of many pressures, they ended up just taking it in their stride. So I think in today's times, you have to move on with the time, and where women are becoming economically independent, are becoming liberal, and the society is also beginning to give them a identity which is unique. Women have stopped being just somebody's spouse. Single women these days are doing very well, whether it's professionally or in business. So women have, people have stopped seeing women as somebody's sister or mother or wife. A woman is a wife, is a woman, and she is kind of now independent of that permanent that prism through which a woman used to be seen, that she, once she's married, that Hindi, that jis ghar mein doli jati hai, usse arthi uthti hai. That was the kind of spirit earlier, that once you're married to a home, the only way to end there is that you die there. And I think this kind of a spirit will also reduce dowry deaths. It will reduce suicides, 306, because a lot of women who were not earlier empowered or didn't have legal support for ending the marriage as and when they liked, lived through a traumatic marriage. So it's going to be a kind of victory, I would say, for both the parties.
All right. Shilpi, indeed, it is a big relief for couples who are seeking divorce. And this ends a wait and a lot of hustle that you have rightly told us. Thank you for taking out your time and speaking with us on Mirror Now. Well, on that note, viewers, we are taking a short break, but we will come right back, so stay tuned.